Hello, my name is Marilyn Rosine Beasley, and I'm here again, and I have several things that I want to share with you. Before I start, I want to tell you that I've been writing a lot of emails to leadership in the country. I've written 3 different emails to President Trump. I wrote to the governor of the state of Texas. I wrote to both senators. I wrote to, I wrote to the Jersey Village City Council. I wrote to Lena Eldago because I was very concerned about this mandate, this order that everybody in Harris County had to wear a mask. As some of you know, I have been a public health nurse since 1991. I am also a certified elementary school teacher. I've been a school nurse. I've been on the front lines. I used to work for the Harris County Health Department. I worked for Harris Health as a nursing instructor for 8 years. So I think I know a thing or two about infections, disease. I even did TB, looking at TB active cases. And in my opinion, what I would have done if I had been in leadership, if I would have told everybody, go outside, go camping for 2 to 3 months, be outside in the air, in the sunlight. The sunlight will kill most of the coronavirus germs. I don't think that's what people realized. I did what I could. I sent over 100 emails out to many people, more than 100 people. I wrote to the Houston Chronicle reporters more than once. I sent emails, and I sent the same emails to them that I had sent to President Trump. And I said, please, everybody needs to go outside. So anyway, I just want to share some things with you. I do understand, I believe that Governor Abbott has decided that we do not have to wear the masks in Harris County. Anyway, I want to show you some things that I've been collecting because I am fully aware that parents are home, their family members are home with children. Those children are not mostly going to school. Most schools are closed around the country. Most college students are now home with their families and they're doing their studies online. So anyway, for those parents who don't know quite what to do with their children anymore, I want to make some suggestions. So I've gathered some things that I've done personally over the years. I have a granddaughter who's now a senior in high school. And when she was younger, we played what we called the money game with her. And what we did is basically, if she could name the coin, and eventually if she could tell us what the coin was worth, we let her keep the coins. So what I have here are some things that you can do with your own children. So this represents the money game. Then also, here's some bottle caps. I like to drink ginger ale, and here's some bottle caps. So with a little person, you could have them start out with 1, 2, 3, and then 4, and so forth. Now, another thing you could do is with pennies. You could have a young child who's starting to learn about counting, and that you have 1 penny, 2 penny, 3, and so forth. Now, one of the things I did with my granddaughter is I did a thing where it was multiplication. So here I have some pennies laid out. So what this represents is 1 times 2 is 2, 2 times 2 is 4, and so forth. So these are just some easy ideas. Now, another thing that I did with my granddaughter is we had this puzzle. And this puzzle is something she did over and over. And each piece is the actual shape of a state. And she did this over and over and had fun. And this was the way that she learned a lot about the states and the shape of the states. Now, if you look here, you can see this white one right here is Texas. And that's something that you can do with a young child, is point out, here is Texas. And then we would say things like, her mother was born in Oklahoma, I was born in Indiana, my mom is from Florida, my father is from around Seattle, Washington. So there's ways to start teaching your child some things that have to do with how it's relevant, maybe not to them, but to somebody else. Another thing that might be of use is this is about stamps. I really like stamps. I don't collect them, I like to buy them and use them. And this is a book of different stamps, and I bought a lot of them. Here's stamps that have to do with Hot Wheels. I've had this stamp before with this star. I've also bought the one that had to do with that was commemorating the Transcontinental Railroad. I bought a lot of those. I use stamps. Also, these working dogs. I had this one that had to do with the moon landing. I've had this one, the Purple Heart. Anyway, this is something that you could do with your children, is you could talk about stamps. You could talk about the history of stamps. You could also talk about coins. If you like old coins, you could talk to them about the history of coins and how important they've been for a long, long time. Now, another thing I did recently is I was at a store. I was at a CVS and I bought this Cosmos. And then yesterday I was at another CVS and they had Queens of Egypt. So I got that. I thought, you know, that looks interesting. So I just want to show you that there's some things around that you might use to start talking to your children about different topics. Now, in addition to that, I like to do things to just see if I can do them. This is a box that I covered myself. This is paper that I really liked. I bought it at Hobby Lobby and I covered the box, and I really, really liked the paper, and I decided that I wanted it on my shelf. So that's just an idea of something. And then another project that I want to tell you about, it's a little more involved, is about making a jean quilt. So what I did is somebody in my family had 2 pairs of jeans that were available. So I took the jeans and I started cutting and ripping. I found that I could cut and rip. And then what I also did is I looked at the most narrow part of the leg to get an idea of what size my square would be. So then I cut one of those, and I've cut several of these squares, and one of the things I wanted to do was make sure that, and I haven't finished cutting it, I wanted to make sure that I had the pocket, because I think that would be fun to have that somewhere on the quilt. You could put, if you were out at a picnic and you had it with you, you could put something in there in that pocket. So I looked at it, at the fabric, and I'm not done yet, but I want to show you quickly what I've done. This is, in my opinion, if somebody is not familiar with sewing, then this is a good thing they can start with. Now, these pieces right here are not perfect. As far as what I've done is I'm working with what I have, and I just want to show that you can put some pins in and you can decide approximately where you want your seams to be. Now, this is the first piece that I have that I'm sewing. So what I would do is I would start about midway where I want to be, and I would be sure that I made a knot. And it's simple to make a knot. You just take your needle, pull it through, and then you have your knot. And then what you also want to do, since you want to anchor this a little bit more carefully, is go ahead and maybe take a small stitch right here, pull it through, and just anchor it a little bit more. You can do it a couple of ways. Right now, what I'll do is I'll just tie this one more time, and that'll anchor it a little bit better. Now, I am using white thread so that it will show up in this video. You might want to really use a color that's closer. So then what I would do is I would just kind of go back and forth, and this could be a basting stitch. Remember that part of this is to learn how to sew. And one way you might do it is to kind of go back and forth a little bit. And remember, this doesn't have to be perfect. You could even do a stitch, you could do a running stitch. You could maybe go back and forth, do some, where you go back and forth on it, because you do want to have this to be fairly secure, because what we're doing here is we are doing this by hand. Now, if I were doing this with a machine, it would be very quick, and I could make it real straight and so forth. But I'm going to do what I can to keep this very straight, and I'm going to make smaller stitches so they'll be a little bit tighter. Now, probably what I'll do after the video is go back over it a little bit so that it's a little more secure, because I want to make sure that this stays nice and neat. And as I build this quilt, I want to take all of these things into, mind. The more care that you take with your stitches, with your the size and everything, the better your quilt is going to look. But remember, this is a project that you might learn how to sew, teach somebody else to sew. So please don't make it so perfect that somebody will give up. You don't want people to be frustrated. Now, the other thing I can do is I can do some trimming along here. I can take my pattern piece. I have a piece that I've cut here, and I can make sure that it's a little bit more square and so forth. I do plan to do some more cutting around the jean pocket. All right, now I want to show you just a little bit about how I did this. What I did is, here is the second pair of jeans. So I did a combination of cutting and ripping. Sometimes it was easier to cut, and sometimes I could just rip and do what I wanted it to do, and I could go fast. Now, another thing that I want to point out is there's this piece right here. And this is something that you could save, and I'm just going to rip a little so you can see. You could save this piece right here. Now, I'm going to go ahead and start cutting again because I want to keep this as close to here as possible. When you are done, you could use this, you could trim it, use this as a tie, you could even roll up your quilt, and then you could use this as a tie for that, or you could just use it for something else. Just think about this. A long time ago, people didn't go and run to the store to buy everything. They did what they could to save, to use something else, save it for another time period. But anyway, this shows you kind of what I did to just cut with my scissors and get it started. And then sometimes I was successful and could rip it quickly. And sometimes I just needed to go ahead, and looks like I'm going to be able to do some ripping. So what I will do when I'm done is I'll just see if I can rip it. If it starts to give me a problem, I'll just keep cutting. Anyway, that is the basics of the jean quilt, and I'll keep working on that. And in another video, I'll show you where I am. Okay, so I want to show you something else that I've been working on. I have been working on doing some fun, quick ornaments that are made from pine cones. So what I did is I took some glue and a paintbrush and quickly painted this like as though from the top down, as though snow would fall that way. And then I had some glitter, and I actually ended up doing it twice because I wanted it to be thicker. So I did that twice. I did it once, let it dry, decided it needed a little more, so I did it again. I did hot glue this bow and this cordon, and I think that for the strength purposes, it was probably better to hot glue. Then I also took this smaller pine cone, and I had this little bit smaller ribbon. I also had some more gold cord, and I had a little bit of this that was left over from something else. So I trimmed a few two pieces, and I hot glued the little pieces first. Then I put the cord in place, and then I put the bow on top. And I had previously already done the treatment with the glue and then having the glitter come down. Next, I'm going to consider doing this. This is a magnolia pod, I think is what you would call it. I'm going to do something with this. I'm not sure yet where I'm going with that. I do think I like that red bow. And I do look at the item I'm working with, and I want to think about the size of the item and the size of the ribbon and so forth, so that it all kind of goes together. This will also need some cord, and so I will play around with that. So these are quick and easy projects. Now I want to show you something else that I've been thinking about. It just so happens that a long time ago, You couldn't go to the store and buy a drum or a musical instrument. So people a long time ago, like the American Indians, would make something that would be like a drum. Now, this is a project you could do with a young child where you can take an empty oats container and turn this into some kind of a drum type thing and make it really fun, let them decorate it. And that could be something where you talk to them about how a lot of different people around the world have been able to make musical instruments out of things that would be like what we would call drums. It's not just not just the American Indians. I believe that there were many people in Africa, maybe other places. So this is just an idea of something that would be quick and easy. Now, I want to show you something else that I did today. I had bought some flowers recently, and these were bent or something, and I wanted to see if I could use them in some form or fashion. So what I did is I trimmed them, and I had a smaller vase, and I was able to put these in the smaller vase. They actually were on a long thing, very, very lovely. There were 2 strands of this, and so now I'm going to have this in this vase, and chrysanthemums last quite a while, so I'll see how those do. Another thing that I have noticed recently is I've had trouble getting vinegar. And I had some wine, some wine that was sitting in a bottle, nothing was going to happen with it. So I decided instead of vinegar, since I can't find it, or it's been hard to find, I would use this to sanitize my vases. So I actually poured this into here, swished it around, and took the rest of it, poured it back in here to use it for something else. I actually plan to go outside, and where I have some rocks, and where I have the rocks, I'm going to pour this red wine into where the rocks are and where the weeds are. I would be using vinegar, and it seems as though vinegar is a very hard thing to get a hold of right now. Now, a couple of other things I want to share with you. One of them is many people know that I attend a Sunday school class taught by Mark Lanier. He's an attorney, and he's written some books. This is one that I like to read daily, Torah for Living, Daily Prayers, Wisdom, and Guidance. Right now, Mark is doing a series on daily devotionals, and it has to do with our situation with the coronavirus. And he's asking people to right now kind of reflect on where are you, where are we? And I've been thinking a lot about what's been going on. I have felt compelled to write a lot of emails and send them to a lot of people so that I think that there have been some problems for me. I think that some of the people in leadership have overstepped their bounds. I'm quite concerned about the Bill of Rights and the Founding Fathers. I don't know what they would think of all of this. And we had something called the Tea Party. I think we have taxation without representation sometimes. These are things that concern me. Now, something else that I think might be helpful if you have older children is to look at Boy Scout merit badges. One time I had looked at Boy Scout merit badge topics, and I thought, wow, those are really, really interesting. So you might go and look at those, and those would give you ideas of things you could do with older students since they're home. So those are something, for you to consider. Another thing that you might consider right now is thinking about, right now, the students across the country are not going to do standardized testing this year. Wouldn't it be ironic if it turns out, since the kids aren't as stressed as they usually are in Texas, concerned about the star, and we hear about the star all the time, wouldn't it be ironic if the kids do better? Now, one thing you might do is you might go and look at the TEA, Texas Education Association, I think is how it's listed. You might go and look at the old STAR tests, and you might find out what they tested the kids on last year. And you could just look at what was last year's 8th grade science, whatever it is. You you could look and see, are there some things that might give you ideas to go over with your students? My daughter taught 8th grade science. I analyzed the 8th grade science STAR test. It had things about the periodic table. You might want to brush up on the periodic table, look at some of the other things that it goes over. So these are some ideas that you might want to do with your students. You also can always talk about the solar system. That's something that students like. You can teach them mnemonics. There's some mnemonics with learning the planets, the order of the planets. There's all kinds of things that you can do. I want to encourage you, though, to always make learning fun. Learning should always be fun. Unfortunately, I think that what's happened in the United States, especially in Texas, is we teach to the test. And I don't think that's helpful for students. There are many students who are not very good readers. So maybe this is a time where they could write their own stories. Maybe they could write a letter to a friend across town and put a stamp on their letter. There's many things that students could do. Little children could tell you a story, and then you could write their story down, and then you could help them read their story. Just remember, you don't want anything to ever be what I call frustrational. You want to always make sure that it's fun for the student, because if it's not fun, then they start to hate school. And I will tell you, I was a school nurse for 6 years, and I saw those little children, the pre-kindergarten children, the pre-Kers, and I saw those kids in kindergarten and first grade. They were so excited at the beginning of the year. And by the time that some of them are in the 5th grade, they dread going to school. So something has happened from when they were little and they were eager to be at school until they're in the 5th grade and they dread coming to school. So this might be an opportunity for everybody in the country to stop and think about, how do we make learning fun? Learning, in my opinion, should always be relevant. And this year, I guess they're not going to be giving out grades like they usually do. It doesn't mean that kids don't have a way to learn. It just might be different, and who knows, maybe it will be better. And I've been covering topics for the last few weeks. I've been talking about gardening, baking, cooking, and all of these things are things where you could incorporate a little bit of arithmetic. Just make it always fun. Don't make it a serious lesson plan. Just make learning fun. Be relaxed, have fun with your students, get outdoors, look on the ground. You would be surprised all the things that are on the ground. Different leaves, pine cones, other things, caterpillars. They're everywhere. They're right under your foot. They're over on next door, wherever. So please, everybody remember, this too will pass. Thank goodness. Anyway, I hope that you will think about some of the things I've shared with you, and think about, I want to share one more thing, and it has to do with Florence Nightingale. She is the founder of modern nursing, and she heard a call, and she ignored it for 15 years, and finally she couldn't ignore it any longer. She lived 1820 to 1910. I had the opportunity to go in London to the museum that honors Florence Nightingale. This is a cup that I bought there, and this is what she said: health is not only to be well, but to be able to use well every power we have. So please think about how special all of us are. We're all unique. We all have something special to give to others. We just need to shine a light. We need to find out what our purpose is and go from there. So please think about what she said and have a blessed week.